events in the Afghan capital. I'm joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He's an author and American foreign policy analyst with defence priorities who himself served in Afghanistan. Thank you very much for being with us. I have to start by asking, you served in the military in Afghanistan. This has been the deadliest day for the US Army in more than a decade. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, it's really anguishing. I was actually in Afghanistan exactly 10 years ago in August of 2011 when a Chinook helicopter crashed and 30 Americans lost their lives all at once. And this is the next deadliest day that we've had in that entire 20 years of war. And it's a tough one. I'm not lying. It's anytime you've been there, everybody in uniform, it feels like you're their brother. And especially as a kinsman of our country, it's a tough day.
President Biden has remained steadfast. He says the withdrawal is right. It will continue. He will stick to the deadline. And he says he has given the military all the support it needs. Do you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. I absolutely wish that it had been done better. It could have been coordinated much more tightly. And I think there's other things we could have done to minimize and mitigate some of this. But look, this was always going to be a disaster the way it happened, because the only reason that all of these things are falling apart right here at the last is because we've had 20 years of abject failure of American policy and unwillingness to be honest with the American people and with the West generally, and then the extraordinary level of corruption within the Afghan government and military, all of which was on display over about a 10-day period when their entire edifice collapsed and allowed the Taliban not even to have to fight for most of their territory and literally drive into Kabul.
But what have the foreign policy failures been? How have the American public been misled or not given the full picture?
Well, so I first served there in 2005 and 2006, and then again in 2010 and 2011, and I saw firsthand on the ground exactly why this would fail, and as did several others, and that's namely because the Afghan military were not being trained to a level where they could stand on their own. We were trying to train them where they had to depend upon us. We saw that the government was continually extraordinarily corrupt. But instead of being honest about that or holding anyone accountable, we kept telling everybody that things are getting better, that they're succeeding, that they're on the right azimuth, that they're getting their corruption under control and they're getting their people's support, none of which was ever true. If we had been honest about this, especially, say, in 2014 or even as late as 2016, if President Obama had gotten us out then, the Taliban only possessed about 6% of the territory. Almost all of this could have been avoided. We could have gotten out in order, and the Afghan government and military would at least have had a chance. But by not being honest and then waiting until this last time when Biden finally pulled the plug, then they almost had no chance and they just collapsed overnight.
President Biden has said the US will hunt down those responsible. They will pay the price. Is that possible? How will he go about doing that?
Absolutely. And in fact, that really underscores one of the reasons why I've been advocating for more than a decade for us to withdraw, because our security is not tied to having troops on the ground in Afghanistan. It never was. And as we have demonstrated when we took out Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, al-Baghdadi in Syria, the leader of Iran, Soleimani, in 2019 or 2020, all of those were taken out without the results of any troops on the ground. Our intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance ability to strike direct targets anywhere in the world that a threat arises, we have that capacity. We've done it, and we're going to continue to do it. Having troops on the ground or having the troops withdrawn, the main thing it does is it takes the target off their back. So now that we won't have any more of these kind of killings, but we still have the ability to reach out anytime we identify a threat.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.